first, the reactions in Paris, even worse. 2 years after the remontado, the unthinkable has happened again. The headlines in L'Équipe as PSG contrived to crash out of the Champions League almost in an unthinkable manner, losing 3-1 at home to Manchester United. And Julien, I know you've been asked to rake over the coals quite a bit today. Well, we are going to continue to ask you to do that. First of all, just talk us through how the 90 minutes went from your perspective.
From my perspective, it was just an absolute nightmare. I was quite confident at the start of the game, and then the first mistake after 111 seconds by Thilo Kehrer, and then you knew from then on that it was going to be a very uncomfortable game, because you knew that this PSG team in itself had the potential of crumbling like they did 2 years ago. You could see that some of the players still had that in their minds, and it was something that unless they were getting clear and, you know, at 1-1 or then leading 2-1 maybe, or even going back to 2-2, unless that happened, then they would be very vulnerable towards the end, and they would let themselves exposed and in danger of conceding a third goal and going out. And it's exactly what happened. It's just that I've been so much with that club through the years, as a kid, as a teenager, everything you want. I never thought it could get worse than 2 years ago. And yet they still managed to do it, and it was worse than 2 years ago because it was at home, because United was so weakened by all the injuries, and because this PSG team was so disappointing, so weak mentally, with so many mistakes from players to the manager to the whole club. I don't know what to say, but this is going to be a scar that will last for a very long time.
Have you been able to come up with any sort of explanation 24 hours on, Jules? Where does the fault lie for you, first of all?
I think there are many reasons. I think if we start with Thomas Tuchel, who did a lot of things right this season, I think the last 30 minutes of the game, he was too much of a passenger, and he was not proactive enough in his coaching. He let things unfold in front of him and not really did anything about it, which I thought was a big mistake. Then the players obviously have to take a lot of the blame. I think and it's not a new issue, but there's a problem of leadership in that team that has been there for a very long time. It's a team that like leaders, and when you sign Gigi Buffon to help you going through to the next level because of his experience, because he's supposedly a leader, and he cost you the game in the way he did yesterday with having one save to make, and that's all he had to do, one save, and he fluffed it the way he did, that obviously doesn't help you. I think there was a bit of complacence, and I think mentally there's an issue there as well. I still cannot believe that since 2 years ago and the game at Barcelona, no one at this club thought about, do you know what, let's just bring in a psychologist. No one might need him, and he might be sat there in an office, and no players or no one from the staff will go and see him and have a chat. But I just think it would have done any harm to anyone to have someone there where players could have been able to talk to before a game like the one last night, and saying, do you know what, I still think about what happened 2 years ago. I still go there at times. I still have that fear in me sometimes in the similar situation. But yet, no one has ever thought about that.
Craig,
well, we could always have a psychologist before our show. But I feel like that sometimes.
Not to be devil's advocate and get you going, but is there not an argument that PSG were not just extraordinarily unlucky? Is that a valid argument? Because I have read that argument in some
Well, I must have missed that.
No.
Well, you're not unlucky when Kehrer makes an early error. You're not unlucky when a goalkeeper that you've brought in, who's been one, if not the best in his pomp, makes a horrendous error. And you're not unlucky in having, you know, what was it, 70% possession and having, what, 4 efforts on target in the space of 90-odd minutes against, and Gilles touched on the injuries, against effectively a Manchester United reserve side. So, you know, some people may think, and we know we're going to get to the penalty, some may think that was unlucky, but there's been a lot of football being played before we got to that stage. When you've got Kylian Mbappe, who is no doubt one, if not the most talented kids on the block, on the planet, when he's going through one-on-one and he's slipping and he's falling over and he's hesitant, that's not unlucky, you know, poor finishing. So I don't think there's any sympathy here for Paris Saint-Germain.
I'm not having any sympathy for PSG at all, but on the one hand, I can see how somebody fashions an argument that this was unlucky, because up until, what, 3 or 4 minutes ago, PSG were going through. The trouble is, when this keeps happening year after year, at some point you've got to say, this is a problem with the club. This is not about bad luck. This is not about one decision going to VAR that went against you. This is not about one young right back making an errant decision or an experienced goalkeeper slipping. This is about a club that has their demons, that they have not buried, as Jules rightly pointed out, and it keeps coming back to haunt them. You spend all this money and packing that dressing room with an incredible amount of talent, yet that team has absolutely no backbone and absolutely no leadership, as Jules rightly pointed out.
The thing for me, this game for PSG should have started after the final whistle at Old Trafford. Because the players, you can blame the manager, manager's got to prepare them, of course he has. You get in when you're in the dressing room, going to the leadership question, you get around each other and you say, lads, remember what happened at Barcelona. This is never going to happen again. Look at the team that they've got out. We can bury this team. If we are correcting our defensive blocks, if we are creative going forward, and this can be done in the lead up to the game. They came out, PSG came out, I didn't recognise this team. They were easy, tapping it, it doesn't matter, this, that, and that. They kept Man United in this game. Yeah. Purely and simply, for me, because of their attitude, it was dreadful.
I'm not going to go down the sort of bottle it line, which I went down yesterday, and I'm not backtracking at all. You can agree or disagree, but I think history will show you that they've not got the job done against the bigger teams or at a later stage of this competition. There's no getting away from that. I think what was poor from them was they didn't manage the game properly as it started to get into the latter stages. They didn't manage a Manchester United side that was weak, that was there for the taking, and they didn't manage the defensive side of the game. They shouldn't have been having to block shots from the edge of the box deep into the game, whenever it was, 90 minutes or injury time. It should have been home and dry by that point, but it wasn't, and it wasn't quite the arrogance of Real Madrid the night before, but I kind of got a feeling as the game was going on that PSG thought, well, we'll keep possession, we'll see the game out because Man United are not going to trouble us, and it came back to haunt them.
Julien, we got a little taste of the reaction in France, the L'Équipe headline, even worse. Give us some sort of sense as at the bigger picture, the bigger reaction.
Yeah, I think it's been a big hangover, really, since last night from the fans who were clearly, and you can understand why, very upset and unhappy. Then looking for, who's responsible, really, a bit what we've been doing for the last 10 minutes, and it's been similar in French media. Yes, you could blame the referee for the VAR decision, and we're going to talk about that. Some people think it was a penalty in France, others don't. But like we've been saying with the boys, there were mistakes made a long time before that, and too many mistakes at that level against a reserve team from United. And United, good on them, they qualified. I'm a bit better, I have to say, because I didn't feel they play. I think they parked the bus, and PSG gifted them 3 goals and the qualification and the win. But good on them, and I hope they go as far as they can in that competition. But this is a game that PSG lost more than a game that United won, really. And then I think decision will be made at the club, not so much now, but they're going to try to cool their head down, everyone. I'm not sure if the sporting director will still be there next season, Antero Henrique, because the transfer windows under him have been pretty dreadful. I'm not even sure Nasser Al-Khelaifi, the chairman, will keep his place, because he's been pretty poor as well in the last 12 to 18 months. So there's a lot of issues, like we said, to address and to sort out at the club in terms of players, in terms of the administration as well, and all around as well. Is something striking that since the Qatari owners arrived, they wanted to cut off the past completely. And I know PSG is not an historical club like Manchester United, for example, and not has as long history as United, but they've done loads of things before the Qataris owner. There was a club there before Zlatan and before the Qataris, but yet they want to cut that off, and there was no former players pretty much invited last night when Sir Alex Ferguson and Eric Cantona and Patrice Evra were all there with United. And I think, again, that shows you, like Shaka said, that the problem is also inside that club, not just inside the dressing room.